Remember, they're changing my voice. Woe to all the attractive women on the planet, especially in California. Woe to YouTube, all the gang stalkers, their offspring, for interfering with this explanation, for suppressing my videos, for making sure that them and their families are disgraced, their churches are disgraced. Woe to all the churches in the area. Woe to all the mosques and synagogues. Woe to all the people who consider themselves martial artists or religious or men or women. Woe to all the adults because they interfered with this video and they interfered with the process of conveying God's message, which makes them pinpointed to a T, pinpointed the enemies of God. Okay, if you interfere in the most important time in history and you don't obey God's Son, you have marked yourselves as the enemies of God to be struck, figuratively speaking, with the lightning of God, and so are your offspring. They're like lightning rods, so to speak, but far worse than that. Okay, they will never escape God's wrath. You brood of vipers. Anyway, so we see in Zechariah 12 where I left off. Okay, so let's go back to Zechariah 9, actually. Let's start with verse 9. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt to the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortresses, you prisoners of hope, and I will announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will bend Judah as I bend my bow and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your son Zion against your sons Greece and make you like a warrior's sword. Okay? So, there's a lot of interpretations of this. To make a long story short, the most logical interpretation is after I'm gone, all true warriors are gone. So these things are gone. It's just craftsmen and sissies and brutes pretending to be warriors. Okay, next section. And again, you're rousing your son Zion against your son's Greece, right? Greek societies, Freemasons are based on Greek thinking for the most part, okay? You know, Greco-Roman thinking, okay? The Club of Rome, right? Greco-Roman thinking, okay? And there's a lot more people that insist on it's like the foundation of Western culture is Greco-Roman thinking, and Zeus is the Greek equivalent of Baal, okay, and Set, the Egyptian deity of evil, rape, storms, chaos, what have you. All right, the Lord will appear. Then the Lord will appear over them. His arrow will flash like lightning. The sovereign Lord will sound the trumpet. He will march in the storms of the south, and the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with sling stones. Okay, it's like the sling that David used against Goliath. Okay, it's the spirit of that idea. It's the spirit of waging war in a way that perhaps is unexpected, okay, without being a cheater. They will drink and roar as with wine. They will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar. The Lord their God will save his people on that day as a shepherd saves his flock. They will sparkle in his land like jewels in a crown. How beautiful, how attractive and beautiful they will be. Grain will make the young men thrive, and new wine the young women. So obviously this can't happen on earth. Take a good look at, I print out lots of pictures myself. I watch, I can't really watch videos with the audio playing, but I watch them with the annotations, and I see tons and tons of examples of people all the time. I go out every day, usually twice a day. I see tons of examples. People look like complete bitches these days, just complete pushovers, sissies, some kind of gender-neutral worm, some kind of conservative kind of chump, some kind of racist idiot. They look completely retarded. They look shallow. They look stupid. They look pussy. They look bitch. Celebrities are complete worms, just complete cowards, geeks, doofuses, dorks, okay, weirdos, okay, and they're not going on and on about how they're changing their look. So they've accepted the murk, right, murking your image, to destroy your image, the mark. They've been marked as a bitch who accepts that the state has ruined their image, breeding and otherwise, without complaining and being honest about it. They've accepted the mark of the beast in so many ways, okay? So obviously this cannot be fulfilled on this planet. And the Bible says in many places the earth is going to be destroyed, it will pass away, it sinks never to rise again, it goes down to the realm of the dead, and so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward. Zechariah 12, Jerusalem's enemies to be destroyed. A prophecy, the word of the Lord concerning Israel. The Lord who stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth and forms the human spirit within a person, declares, right, that part's key, forms the human spirit in a person. Okay. He declares Jerusalem, let's see. So he declares, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. So let's look at it like this. Some of you are confused about what they mean about Jerusalem. Okay, it is the idea that Jerusalem is superimposed on. For example, the Jews in the Bible, okay, were not the chosen people. The Jews who people call themselves Jews today are really the synagogue of Satan, is what the Bible is saying. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, and they're not the chosen people of God. Okay, for example, if you're from Europe and you come to America, are you in the Native American spirit? No, you're in the European spirit. Okay, if you're from Africa and you go to the land of Canaan and rename it Jerusalem, are you in an African spirit or are you in the Canaanite spirit, in an African spirit? So when Nimrod founded Babylon, he founded it in an African spirit. Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod, Nimrod founded Babylon. Abraham later on is born in Chaldea, where people were saying all the time, like Nimrod, a proverbial saying, right? Proverbs is a book in the Bible, proverbial saying. Genesis 10 points out, you can see the various translations. Like Nimrod, a mighty hunter, a mighty warrior before the Lord. So their warrior spirit, spirit animal, spirit person, spirit fish, spear fishing, great fishermen, right? Their war spirit was African. So Jerusalem refers to a specific African martial arts spirit. Because then what happens? Then Abraham, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Jacob changes his name to Israel after he wrestles with God spiritually and so on and so forth as the story goes. Obviously, no one could ever possibly beat God, so it's just a story. There's all kinds of translations and interpretations. So they go to Egypt, right? So they go back to Africa, where Moses learns the martial arts and the ways of the Egyptians, and then he leads the Jews in the story who are still in an African spirit, who even went back to Africa, okay, out to the promised land. And they're fighting with all kinds of people, okay, in an African spirit. So Jerusalem and Zion are an African spirit. Moses even takes a Cushite wife, and Hebrew is an Afro-Asiatic language. Okay? When white people come here speaking English, okay, and they're white and they cultivated their spirit and their life in Europe, are they in an African spirit? No. Are they in a Native American spirit? No. They're in a European spirit that moved to America. When God's spirit is drawn to the earth, is it from the earth? No. God is otherworldly. He's from somewhere else, right? From heaven, from the source, made himself, what have you. Okay? That is key to understand this. If you don't understand this, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And if you're not in my spirit, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It said God forms a spirit within a person. Okay, and they need to wash their soul and their spirit with the living water of God and be overcome with the Spirit of God, which is an African spirit. If you don't understand that, you're a dumbass. It even says in Amos 9:7, are you not the same as the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? Right? And who are Ethiopians? Who are Cushites? They represent all the Africans. Okay, they even at one point they said to the lands of Cush and beyond. Cush refers to all the black Africans is the simplest answer except for Mizraim, which is kind of like a mixed person, mixed in Mizraim. There's something there. Okay? Pretty straightforward. So Mizraim refers to where black people mix with other people. Cush more refers to black people is the simplest answer. But the whole story is superimposed on an African spirit. Why don't they use the word Africa? From my understanding, if I remember correctly, there's some guy named Africanus renamed it Africa. So there's all kinds of confusion in regards to what was called what and when and why. And that goes back to the Tower of Babel and Babylon. But when you see Jews who look like Bill Gates, right, with a yarmulke or some, Bibi Netanyahu, Ben Bernanke, You think they're in the mighty African warrior spirit of God, that they're in the mighty spirit, and you think that a small group of them took on large groups of people and triumphed over them, at hand to hand combat, then you've lost your fucking mind. Obviously, it's not their ancestors that the story is actually referring to. Can you imagine Bill Gates and them? Come on, guys, with Pee Wee Herman and shit. It's fucking retarded. The IDF and the Mossad. Come on, guys, come on. It's fucking stupid. Okay, those Semites there would have handed them their lunch. The most feeble, white-looking people, with all due respect, if any is due, goes to the Middle East and takes on people who are hardened from years of intertribal clashes. Okay, they're going to get squished like a bug. So that's not what happened. Okay, what they did is they superimposed. Whoever wrote the story, whether it was black people or the ancestors of the white Jews, they superimposed themselves on a martial art group of people. They could actually take on a larger group of people and triumph back to back. Okay? There's no other way to possibly look at it. It is impossible. Impossible to be sane and to think that people like Bill Gates, drew on a martial arts spirit, okay, and fought with these people, and then as they're evolving, keep in mind the word evolving, that they evolved into nerds, as they're supposed to get getting more healthy and taller over time and more, it simply did not happen. It is preposterous to think it happened. And we look at the images we have from Egypt and so on and so forth, it's clear that the mighty martial art races there were black people. We see the stela of the races, we see how Egyptians are depicted. It's clear that it is African genes that allowed them to be great. So the story is clearly superimposed on black people. Now, for those of you who are like, oh, then you believe that, if you were the God looking down, and you know that white people are unfocused and silly quite often, right? Jews quite often, right? There's nerds and craftsmen, and these guys are unfocused and silly for the most part, right? Frats, rock and roll, emos, goths, jocks, okay? Would you think that those people are right to rely on themselves and people like them in regards to who the chosen people are, and to select the chosen people as the most unfocused people they can think of? So these people sense the Spirit of God. They have sense. The Bible's talking about insight and sense and wisdom. You think that the smart thing to do is for them to say, hey, it's somebody like us, like a bitch? Or you think they must have known that the most sensible race, black people, in their genome, at some point at least, had the true martial art order of God? I mean, this is fucking 1 + 1 = 2 here. Martin Luther King, not Bill Gates. Nelson Mandela, not Ben Bernanke. Okay? All of Israel, not a single person of note has ever arisen from Israel. Not a single person of great moral worth has ever come from the modern state of Israel. Not a single Jew of moral worth. We just see, Noam Chomsky? Okay? Do people pick figs from thistles or grapes from thorn bushes? So what is it about? With all due respect, if any is due. Now again, I'm a little bit bitter that people lie about this, yes. Am I like, yay, take that? No. This has to be said, okay? And I hope that the Jews and the whites and the LGBT and other black people and everyone else can get over the truth and rally to me before it is too late. You've had fires, you've had earthquakes, you've had floods, okay? You've had serious wake-up calls. 1 million Americans died in the pandemic, and you still refuse to turn to God, just like it says in Revelation. The people, by your actions, being Satanists and in Luciferian groups and you're cursing God in response to what has happened to you, because people like you refuse to build cities correctly, because people like you use technology to do all kinds of unsavory things, and you refuse to turn to God. So we see Zion is like a fire, the clans of Judah like a fire in Jerusalem that are burning the sheaves around them. This is also a part in Zechariah. And people are drunk with the blood of the saints, which is like water and fire, right? The rivers turn to blood and rivers turn to fire, right? We see in Isaiah where pitch, right? Pitch to make a fire is being laid out. Wood is being laid out in Isaiah 30. And the streams turn to pitch. And the streams of Edom, which is a part of the greater Babylonian system, and it turns into fire. That's why you see in popular culture hell depicted as a lake of fire. They're drunk off the blood of the saints, which turns into a lake of fire, which it continues to burn their soul after their flesh is gone in the spiritual realm. Okay? That is key in what they're getting at here. And I didn't even explain it to the optimum degree here, but I expect that you all understand that I'm right, and that you understand with wickedness comes consequences. That's why you have a conscience. Your conscience is not just warning you, hey, you know, that's not right. It's warning you because your soul is going to hell. It's saying, hey, buddy, just like your body warns you when you step on something sharp or something, your conscience is warning you that your soul is burning.